Welcome back to the web development class with Steward, Godwin, Jornsen. Our last class, we actually ended up in lesson 2 in writing an article, and that was this article over here. Today, we want to take this a step further and introduce cascading style sheet. You probably know this already as CSS. We will create a CSS file, link it to our HTML file. We're going to use that CSS file to style this very article. To begin, we will create a new file which we will call lesson3.html. Remember, we have the other lessons there, and I don't want to alter those files, so you can have them for reference. I will open lesson 2 article and copy everything inside this lesson 2 article and simply paste them in here. So we paste this code which we copied from lesson 2 articles into lesson 3.html. And we are going to open this, save this, and open it with live server. We're going to click open with live server. And if you look at your browser, you could see lesson 3.html right there, lesson 3.html. The first thing we will need to do here, we want to be able to change a lot of things here. We want to target each, using CSS, we're going to target each of these tags, these elements, the body element, the H1 element, the H2 element, the H3 element, and the P paragraph element. We're going to target every one of them and change what they look like. So we have our screen set and ready for our dev work. We want to start styling this, and the CSS we're going to use will determine what this finally looks like. Remember, we want to change a lot of this. So let's begin. Open up the Explorer, create a new file, but this time our file extension is going to end with .css. We're going to call this style.css, and we press enter. This is the CSS file we are going to use. We're going to use our HTML markup in one file, and the scripts and the codes that will style the CSS will be in another file. Now, this is what will happen with a CSS file. Let me introduce this. First, there will be the target element. Target element would be H1 or a body or a paragraph tag, or could be a class. Classes begin with a dot. After a dot, you give it whatever name you want. My title, you could call it my title this way. You could say you name it header. You could name it whatever. You could target IDs. We'll come to IDs also, but you would target IDs like that, like header, or you could call it title, or whatever the case may be. So we are targeting the H2 element, or the H1 element, which is this Steward web programming word here. If we say H1, open and close curly braces, in there, the first thing that we'll need to put there is the property that we are targeting. The first thing we'll put in there is the property that we're targeting. What property do we want to modify? Say the font size. And we're going to just make this very big. So let's just say 48 pixel. So we will return to the CSS style and begin to type the styles in a bit later after we have structured everything that we need. Let's go back to the HTML file, close this up, and we're going to have to point and link these two files together. So this HTML file will know that we expect it to use the markups or the syntax or the codes within the style.css. Let's do this very quickly. We will simply go type link, enter a href, which will contain the name of the file. If it's inside a folder, we type the folder name first, followed by a /. But if it's not inside a folder, we'll simply type the file name just as it is right here. So we're going to say style.css. Remember to type it in with the extension. VS Code will help us with some of that in order to help point to the file properly. The next thing you need to do is to enter a rel. For a rel, you're going to enter style sheet. Now this is a self-closing tag, meaning we just put a forward slash and a greater than sign and save. Once you do that, nothing really happens. Let's close this up. Nothing really happens, but both files are now connected. Let us go, for example, and say we want this H2 or this H1 tag to be very large. We first of all type in the target element H1, and this means wherever there is a H1 tag in our markup, this style will affect it. The coily braces, and then the H1, the coily braces. Now, what properties do we want to target? We want to target the font size. We enter a column, and now what's the value we want to assign to this property? Let's just say 48 pixel for now and hit save, and immediately you see that that changes to a 48 pixel font size. Let's make it a little more larger than it is and say 52, and there you go. Let's assume we want to take out the bold, the strong effect on this font. We want to make it a normal. It's a header one, but we just want to make it a normal weight. So we're going to go and type font weight. You see that there, the autocomplete will help you out there. And in that font weight, we can simply type the word normal, or we could go in and type things like 300. That should, depending on whether your font has light, lighter, medium, regular, bold, bolder, semi-bold, extra bold. There are lots of font weights here that you can use. Let's look at some of the suggestions that we are presented with. You could see 10, you could see 300, 400, 600, 700, or you could use any of these words. Bold, bolder, lighter, normal. So we might want this to still be bold, and we make it bold, just like that. Now, the next thing that we want to look at is to actually style this. Remember, we are not doing anything to the HTML file apart from this link that we have added here to the HTML file. All our work will be done in the CSS file in this class. So we've done this, and let's delete this because we don't want this change and reset our page. We want to start with styling the body tag. And what we want to do with the body tag is that we want to first of all change the font size, the font type. We want to change the font type that we have on the body tag. So let's do this. We type body, the target element, then the coily braces. Now the property will be font family. And the font family, we could choose Arial, sans serif. You have a lot of default font families here, which are font families that most systems should have. Beyond this, we're going to use Google Font in one of the classes to enable you to be flexible enough to use any font that you want to use as provided by Google. But for now, let's pick Arial and see what that gives us. I'm going to zoom this out a little bit more. Let's save. There you go, Arial. What if we had a font like Tahoma in front of that? Then we have Tahoma. Is that if this font family is not available in the user system, then use the next one. If that next one is not available in the user system, then use the next one. If that one is not available, then use the next one. Just keep going. If it's not available, then use a sans serif font that is in the user system by default. So there you go. The next we might want to do is reduce the font size. Let's change the margin. The margin has to do with the regions around the body of the document. We want to create a little space to move our items away from the body. So let's go and say margin left. We want the margin left to be 40 pixels. There you see the margin left. Or to make that more visible, let me say 80 pixels, and you can see that we make that more visible. To do a margin right, let's also say 80 pixels. There's a shortcut for this, but we will present the shortcut as we go in other classes. Now we're done targeting the body. Let's go target the H1 element now. Coil braces and then the H1 element. For this one, we want to use a blue color. Let's say we want to use this cornflower blue. We can use the name of the cornflower blue, or we could use the RGB colors or hex colors. You need to be quite familiar with colors here because you need it to work a lot of times. So RGB colors, or we can use a hex value for the very same color. If you click right there, you see the hex value showing. You could use this pop-up to make or select the colors that you want. All you do, if it's not showing, mouse over the color knob for a few seconds and it should pop up for you to make changes. If you click here, you can change the colors to hue, saturation, or you could use RGBs, or you use the hex color code. Okay, so for now we're going to leave it. This is hue, saturation, and lightness. We're going to use hex color code. So now we've changed that, and we want the H1 tag to be a little larger. So we're going to say font size, and we're going to make this 24 pixel. We're going to make this 48 pixel. And there we have it, 48 pixel. Now we are done with that. Next, let's target the H2 tag. If you go back to our markup, our H2 tag was used for this lesson 2, which is the subtitle that we have under our main title. So that's the H2 tag, subtitle that is under the main title. So we want to style that subtitle right away. So our H2 is our subtitle. We want the color to be a gray. We want the color to be a gray. I'll make it lighter so you could see the difference. That's it. Right there. And we might want to add a little extra margin to the bottom of it. So it keeps, so we say margin bottom. We could see the margin bottom right there. And we could say we want a 40 pixel for the margin bottom. If we want this to go closer that way, we could take out the, we could set a margin bottom. Let's just put a margin bottom of 0 right there. So we take out the margin bottom from the first H1 element and we place margin bottoms there. So let me make this a margin bottom of 60, and we see that we have immediately pushed this right down. We are going to proceed to styling these other markups. But what we want to do is take out the bold from the H3 and make the font a bit larger. For the H2 here, we want the font to be 32 pixel. We want the font to be 32 pixel. All right, let's go to the H3. For the H3, we want to take out the bold and increase the font size. So we save, and there you have it. If we want to change the color, so now we have the colors for this one. The body tag has everything that it styles. All the content of the paragraph tag will be influenced by what's in the body. See if you can read out CSS properties and the values that go with them. If you can read them out, try them out on your code. For now, we're not using classes or IDs. We're simply targeting the elements directly. To wrap this up, we're going to place a line beneath this H2 tag. Place a border, a line beneath this, and I want to show you how to do that very quickly. Split the margin 60 into 2 groups and then use one as a margin and the other as a padding. Play with them, all of these CSS styles. Once we come to focusing a little bit more on CSS, you will probably see how we would use CSS to change the markups. Interestingly, you could have seen how we didn't do so much to our previous HTML file. We only just added a style sheet to it, and using the style sheet, we began to target each element in here. We targeted the body that had to do with anything we style on the body, affected everything enclosed in the body. We targeted the H1, then we targeted the H2 and H3 tags, which are the H1, the H2, and the H3 tag. And beneath the H2, we place this. If we come before this one, before the article H1, and we include a H2 and say another subtitle and save, you will immediately see the same style applied to that H2 tag. And with that, we write our styles once, and we can have that style affect all of the markup, the repeated markup in our site. If we wanted to reduce the font size of the H2 tag and we change that, it changes everywhere we have a H2 tag. So if we say 24, we find out that it reduces 24 every place that we have used that tag. It's a pretty nifty way and cute way to make and style modify your web page. If there are questions you have to ask or something you haven't understood, feel free to ask and we will revisit this again. Thanks for being with me in this web programming class. We've begun to introduce CSS to our code already. If a question you have to ask, feel free to ask the question and I'll try to provide an answer as much as I can. I'm Steward Godwin Jornsen. Stay blessed.